Almost 3/4 of coffee that is consumed in the UK is instant. Startup Pact Coffee trying to change that by focusing on fresh flavors. Stephen Rapoport is with me now. He is the founder. So, Stephen, this is a subscription service. How does it work from soup to nuts?
It is. And hi, Deirdre. Thank you for having me on. I've kind of got a love-hate relationship with the word subscription. It implies a rigidity, or the fact that we're going to kind of sell you what we want when we want. The way that we work is slightly different. We find out when a customer joins Pact Coffee the kinds of coffees they're going to enjoy by asking a bit about their brewing habits and whether they take milk and this kind of thing. And then also how often they need a bag. And we'll send them a bag of coffee they're going to love as often as they need one. Around that kind of cadence of delivery, we then have a lot of flexibility tools to make sure that people aren't oversupplied or undersupplied.
Now, I know back in 2012 when you started this, I also know this is not your first startup, so we'll talk about your track record in the meantime. But, I mean, it was you, right? You were the one actually packaging the coffee, going to the local post office and mailing it to people.
Yeah, that's right. And I really kind of missed that period. There was a 5-month period, end of 2012, beginning of 2013, when I was, grinding coffee in my kitchen, handwriting the tasting notes on every bag. This is what it looks like now. It's upgraded a little bit. We've actually invested in a printer, imagine. I was, sticking the stamps on, queuing up at the post office, calling every customer that signed up to say thank you and kind of try and learn a bit about their coffee habits, what we could be doing better, could be doing worse. So,
Stephen, what gave you this idea? As I mentioned, you're a serial entrepreneur. This is your 4th startup. So what made you think, okay, I can take on the coffee shops, and I know Starbucks is in the UK, not doing as well in the UK as it is in the US, but it's not as if that's the only
they're not doing
chain.
Badly. No, quite right. And we're really single-mindedly focused on coffee at home. I think increasingly, particularly in the UK, as you mentioned, people's the quality of coffee that people expect outside their home in coffee shops and the quality they get at home, there's just a big disparity. But your question, what gave me the impetus to start? It was actually during my last business was acquired by Airbnb in 2012, and I spent a lot of time working with those guys, sort of asking myself, having founded my business Crashpadder in the same month as them, how is it that they out-executed me to such an extraordinary extent? And there's all these lazy answers about kind of in the valley, there's greater access to capital, greater talent concentration. But in reality, it's passion. They cared so much more. My wife and I were talking, and she said, look, we'll follow that. Like, do the thing about which you are most passionate, and then find out if there's a good business model in it afterwards. And that's exactly what I did.
Well, that is how a lot of successful entrepreneurs function, so it makes sense that you would espouse that idea. But Stephen, as far as cultural differences, I actually read in TechCrunch that this idea about instant coffee really came about during World War II when coffee was rationed. And I always think of the UK as more of a tea place. So how many cultural headwinds are you actually fighting?
That's a really good question. I mean, we are known as a nation of tea drinkers. In fact, it's a slight misconception. Coffee, both in terms of volume and revenue, outsold tea last year by quite a significant margin. But instant coffee somehow did make it into our kitchens. And like most things that came out of, it was actually during the First World War, instant coffee came about. And like most things that came out of the trenches, it's horrid. So we're fighting a slight headwind there, but in honesty, I think a lot of people, something you find every time I have a conversation with one of our customers or one of our future customers, a coffee drinker, is that most people want to upgrade their coffee. Most people want the best coffee experience they can have. And I think what we're finding increasingly is that people are sort of frustrated by the snobbery and the slight pretentiousness that surrounds coffee of this standard. It's the best coffee on the planet. But ultimately, it doesn't need to be complicated if you want to keep it simple.
All right. Well, let us know when you start shipping to the U.S., Stephen. We're glad to meet you.
We will.
Stephen Rapoport joining us there,
much.
the founder of Pact Coffee.